Hello and welcome to another GHC walkthrough video. This one being about how to set up your share copy of your dashboard so that your team can see it together. We think it's a very powerful feature to be able to have your team gather around the dashboards so that you can build a richer narrative of what's happening in the life of your church together. Now, a brief introduction to this video particularly. This will be broken up into chapters so that you can skip ahead to a particular step in the process. But first, let me give you a bit of an introduction. If you watched this before, skip over it. The reason why we have to create a copy in this way and not just copy the URL and share it is the way we've set up the dashboards. So what we've done at GHC is we've created the dashboards, we own them, and it's the viewer has to authorize the credentials. That is, when you open up the dashboard, you have to put in your API key and authorize it in that sense. And that's a thing that we only want one team administrator to do in each church. You don't want to be handing around the API key every time you want to share it. That API key is a special key that should be restricted. Now, what that means is that if we don't want to share the URL and the API key every time we want someone else to look at it, we need to create a copy of the dashboard and then set the credentials to be with the owner, which would be you because you own the copy. And what that means is that when you share a link to that copy with the credentials with you as the owner of that copy, then anybody you share it with can simply open it up without doing anything else. I hope that makes sense. Let's actually step into to myGHC, which is where most of our walkthrough videos start. And again, just to give you a bit of an overview of what's happening here, this particular account is an active large church plan, and that means that they have access to the turbo dashboards. We're just looking at the standard copies today, not the turbos. But for the sake of just explaining what's happening, this button here says Open My Toolkit. This person's already saved the copy of the Turbo Toolkit, a shareable copy, back into myGHC, which means that when we click this button, we're not opening the master GHC copy, we're opening their particular copy, which is turboed, the little bolt there, and shareable. And because it's been shared, and there's now all these extra options under the gear menu that allows you to invite other members to my Team GHC account and other things like that. But if we scroll down, we can see that the checkup has not had a copy made, and we're being prompted to make a copy. And in this case, it's asking us to create a shareable turbo copy. All the copy options are behind this, whether it's you want a turbo or not, or whether turbo is available for you or not. We're just going to click on this anyway, and that's going to open up some instructions. And then we're going to skip over the turbo link and pretty much go straight to this copy of this version of the checkup dashboard. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do as we set up the copy is just move our mouse to the top of the dashboard screen, and down will come the Google Data Studio menu. We're going to move across to the three dots and simply say make a copy. And up comes this dialog box, and we're just simply going to say copy report. And then after a little bit of loading time, you will see this screen. We're now in the edit screen of the dashboard, and we can tell that because we have these extra menu items and this on the right hand side as well. Don't get too overwhelmed by these things. We're simply going to go to resource and then manage added data sources. Now, again, don't be overwhelmed by some of the details here. All this simply represents is that your dashboard is synthesizing multiple data sources that have been extracted by your church management system. And we're going to, for each one of these data sources, we're going to change those credentials of this copy from viewer to owner, to you, the owner of the copy. And the number of data sources will vary depending on what dashboard you're using. So if there's 5, say for example in the toolkit, if you're using Elvanto, then you've got to do this step. You've got to do this 5 times. What I'm about to show you. Some of them have 1, some of them have, in this case, 2. So we're going to hit edit and let that load up. hit reconnect, say apply. And again, that screen will look slightly differently depending on what you're doing. And here is what we're looking for here. Data credentials need to move from viewer to owner. In this case, me, the owner of the copy. I'm going to hit update and done. And we're going to do that again now for this one here. Reconnect. And all that, we're just going to hit apply. We're going to change the viewer credentials to owner, update, and done. And that's it. What that means now is that I am in a position to share this without having to prompt those that I share it with to enter any credentials. But what's important here is that we actually set the share parameters. So I can add individual people here at this point. So I could type in some emails and then view, and then they'll be notified. Or I could go to manage access and I could share with the whole domain. In this case, I could share with my whole team on that use neac.com.au, and I want them to only view. I don't want them to edit. There's no reason for them to edit, and I don't want them to modify some of the settings that that might be tricky to undo. We strongly discourage, in fact, we think it breaks the terms of service to use any of the options above this, because if you hit anyone with the link can view, sure, that's in classic Google form, that makes it very easy to share with just whoever you send that link to, but you cannot control the limits of that sharing. So the person that you share with could then share it with others, and you can't stop that. And because you're using confidential information, that's why we think it breaks the terms of service. Anyone on the internet definitely makes this a very public document. And don't forget, this represents names and people that are at your church. And so, yeah, either use it as restricted to your domain or add people individually. And once you've done that, so I'll do this one here. I'll copy and I'll hit save. Now what we can do, if we go back to the instructions, in fact, we can at any point we can, where did we get up to? We got up to, well, actually I was going to say, at any point in the instruction set, we can save that link back to myGHC. And so all you need to do is paste that and hit save and return. But that will of course jump us out of the setup process. And so I'll just pause here to say, actually, there's a couple more steps that I want to show you if you want to go a little bit further. But at any point, you can hit save and return. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. So the next couple of steps would be about setting default values and share settings. So let's have a look at some of those default settings. If I clicked on location here, I get a bunch of options here. Again, don't be overwhelmed by the detail, but what I do want you to notice here is there is a default selection value. And what I can do here is I could restrict, well, not restrict, sorry. I think that's the right spelling. I'll know I get that right if it comes up with a little 1 here in the corner. If I've misspelt it, it won't select it. But what that means is when I share this with somebody, it will all open up with a default value of that, what we've just entered. Now they'll still be able to select other locations, but it will start with that selection set. And that's really handy. You can do the same thing with demographics. So what I typically do is I would start with a default value of adult, and then we can expand it to include kids and youth, but it starts with adults. And again, I hope that sort of simplifies the options for people as you share it, so that they don't have to work out what locations. So once you've done all of that, now we can go back into the save here. We're going to paste that Data Studio link, hit save and return. And what will happen now is we can see that it says open my checkup. We've now saved that link back into myGHC, which means you don't have to go through Google Data Studio directly or through an email to try and find that link again. It's now saved there directly. And as I mentioned, you can now open this gear to see what options are available. You can update to the turbo copy if you have a large church plan. What we haven't talked about is inviting members to my Team GHC, because this is another feature that you can access if you're a medium or large church plan user. And this is a feature that is a bit faster and more intuitive than simply emailing that link to your team. Of course, they're going to lose that link in the emails. What you can do now is open this option here, and here we go. So what we can do now is I can add people to the team account by simply entering their name and email. They'll receive a prompt to say you're being invited to my Team GHC account. And when they log in, they have restricted access. That is, they're not going to be able to access your account settings and whatnot, but they can access any dashboard that has been saved back into myGHC. So in this case, they'd be able to see the toolkit, the checkup, they'd be able to see this one here. But this one, the regathering monitor, a new option for Avanto, we haven't saved a copy back into myGHC. And so in this space, it will say dashboard hasn't been saved, contact team administrator. So they'll be able to see only those dashboards that we've saved back into myGHC. One more thing that's worth knowing about the way that copies are set up is that because they're a copy, they're no longer going to be updated as we at GHC update them. So if you haven't created a copy, every time we update a dashboard at GHC, you'll instantly see that update. But once you've created a copy, of course, you've severed that because you've made a copy. And what we've built into myGHC is an alert to say that an update is available. And we can see that here in the serving activity loads. A copy has been saved back into myGHC, and the gear has gone red and a new version is available. And so if we click that, it will show us what version details have been updated. Here we go down to the change log. And we can see here that there's been a slight update, and we can click this link if we'd like to make that update, or we could just let it be because we don't really care about that update. But that's an important thing to know as you've created your copy. Hope this video has been helpful to help you understand how the dashboards are set up and how you can best use them so that your team can see what's happening in the life of your church, and then together you can pursue the health and growth of your church. Thanks very much.